Very quick Lightroom tutorial, gonna show you how to get from here to here. Timestamps down below in the description as well if you want to skip ahead to any of the editing bits. So it's a nice little photo here, we got a good composition, we got some nice little leading lines, but it looks a bit dull, so that's why I like to give it that jungle feel, kind of bright yellowy tones, so let's get into editing. So first thing we're going to do for this is just the basic corrections, and you're probably going to do this for about 99, maybe even 100% of your photos, and that's just kind of play with the exposure, fix it to the point we want. I think this could use a touch more exposure, not a lot. I like to add a little bit of contrast. Some photos you take away contrast, kind of depends. But what you'll do for almost every single photo is take the highlights down a little bit. I like around -50, and shadows will come up, get a little bit extra detail. Don't need that much, let's go around +30. And whites and blacks also will kind of just depend on the photo and the style you're going for. For a photo like this, I think we're going to increase the whites and give it that kind of punchy feel. Right around, we'll go +30 for now, I might come back to that. And we're going to drop the blacks, which I tend to do with almost all my photos. Because we're, pumping up the shadows a little bit, dropping the blacks is a good little offset. It adds a little bit more natural contrast to it. Now for the tone curve, I like to add crushed blacks to a lot of my photos. That's when you take the blacks here and you lift them off, but I don't think it suits this photo very much. So I think we're going to continue with that punchy theme, and we're going to drop the blacks a little bit. I don't think we're going to touch the midtones. At least not yet. Midtones are going to stay the same, and we're going to raise our highlights. Yeah, that's about good. So that's our basic setup for the photo. I've done my basic corrections. It goes from here to here. It just looks a little bit punchier. It looks a little intense at this point, but don't worry, we're going to work on that. I think when it comes to temperature, when I see a photo like this and I'm going for that lush kind of tropical jungly feel, I want to add a little bit of warmth. Cold is the exact opposite of what we're feeling right now. Let's go +4, +5 is perfect, just the slightest touch. I don't think we need any tint, and maybe a touch of vibrance. You can't really tell, we're going to leave it in there. Color slider, this one is important. Because we have a subject in the photo, I try really hard not to mess around with the oranges and the yellows too much. However, we are going to put slight little corrections into this. We're going to pump up the saturation on the orange just a little touch. I know it's tough to see there, but this is going to affect a little bit of the woods. It is going to affect a little bit of the stairs, and I think that's going to make a pretty big difference on the photo. Yellows also, I think we are going to bump up as well. Yellow is a good color to mess around with nature. For example, take a look at the difference we take yellows out of nature here. It makes a huge difference on the way this photo looks. You can really mess around with that when you're going for like dark, faded, moody colors. You can take the yellows all the way out and then take some saturation out of the green. For my case, we want the opposite, so I want to add some yellow into this photo, kind of give it a more lively feel. I think about +10 is correct. Yeah, and I will actually drop the luminance a bit because I don't want them to be too punchy. Greens, I don't think we're going to touch the greens. I might take a little bit luminance down because I still feel like they're a bit too punchy for my eyes. And that's perfect. Very slight, very subtle, but does make a difference. Going down to the effects tab, I don't think we need to touch anything here, except I do like to add a vignette to my photos. I do think it makes a nice little, what's the word I'm looking for, creative difference. Dehaze doesn't really have a purpose in a photo like this, although I do love dehaze. I will, however, add a touch of clarity. Ever so slightly. Nice and easy. Touch of maybe +9 clarity. Sounds about right. So you might be thinking at this point is that this photo looks okay, but it doesn't really quite look like this one. It doesn't have that bright, punchy effect. And that's because we haven't done split toning yet. And split toning is what makes this effect. This is what's going to make the photo look the way it is. You can't do like colors and adjustments will never make the photo look quite like this. So what I'm going to do, and this is what I do for every photo that I want to look lush, I want to look tropical, is add in a touch of yellow into the, not the shadows, into the highlights. Be nice and gentle, maybe a little bit of an orangey tone as well. That's going to give it that bright, warm feel. Will really feel like it's almost like a hot summer's day reflecting off of these, these bright greens. And into the shadows, we are going to add a blue. I grabbed the wrong one again. We are going to add a blue, but it's going to be a light blue. We're going to add a like turquoise, maybe even almost a greenish hinge. Let's see what we think of that. Maybe a bit more yellow. right about there. Add a touch of sharpening into the photo just because I like the look of it. Remove chromatic aberrations, and we are pretty much done. If you take a look in comparison to my last one, I actually like this edit a lot better. I think I'm a bit too exposed in the highlights. I think you're too bright up here in this top corner. I think this one actually looks a little bit nicer, if you ask me. But there you go. Just add a little bit of yellow, add a little bit of green, add some light turquoise, greeny blue to the shadows, yellows to the highlights, and it makes a huge, huge difference. Unbelievably nicer. I think I'm also going to add a crop to this one before we continue. Let's go to a 1x1 for Instagram. We're going to center our subject right on the rule of thirds there. Then we got a nice little leading line up into the forest. Looks like she's adventuring off into the jungle. There you go. Before, after. I didn't even clarify. By the way, I edited out the corner here, as you can see. I used a cloning brush to get rid of this little box because I found it quite distracting. You can see it in this one as well. All I did for that, got on my brush, I used a heel brush. I took one massive little lump from here, moved it down to here. I'll actually show you guys for an example. Take this, click, move it down to the corner, other way around. Added on a little bit of feather around 50%, and ta-da, all done. All right, that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed the little tutorial. I hope you like this color grading style. If you want to use this as a preset, feel free. I might put a link in the description for a download as well, but be warned that this preset and this editing style is very specific. It doesn't work on a lot of photos. I'll show an example on screen now. It has to be a very specific set of nature and a very specific set of colors for this to work. Otherwise, the split toning just absolutely wrecks the image. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'll see you guys next Friday.